and to rejoice and come in, and to rejoice and come in. Today will be a joyful day, and to rejoice and come in, and to rejoice and come in, and to rejoice and come in. Today will be a joyful day, and to rejoice and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Today will be a joyful day. Today will be a joyful day, and to rejoice and come in.
Yep. Well, welcome everyone to the Sanctuary Boston. I'm Joe. I'm up here with Tayward, Matt, and Mark David. We start everything out with singing, and we hope that you'll sing along, add harmonies, add your own percussion and dance moves, sit quietly, whatever it is that you need to do to feel fully present and engaged this evening. We hope that's just what you do. Our next one is Blue Boat Home. I invite you, if you'd like to rise in body or spirit, if that'll help you be in it, go for it.
Can you all hear my guitar coming through there? Got it, right. Here we go. Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the light of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me
My name's Emma. I'll be reading the chalice lighting today. Today's chalice lighting is from Manifesto, The Mad Farmer Liberation Front by Wendell Berry. And we also invite those of you joining us online to light your chalice, a candle, or otherwise take a moment to ground yourself in the space. Ask the questions that have no answers. Invest in the millennium. Plant sequoias. Say that your main crop is the forest that you did not plant, that you will not live to harvest. Say that the leaves are harvested when they have rotted into the mold. Call that prophet. Prophecy such returns. Put your faith in the 2 inches of hummus that will build under the trees.
Call that prophet, and prophecy such returns. I love this poem. It's worth reading the whole manifesto, even though it's longer than we had time for this evening. Welcome all to Sanctuary Boston, a community of vibrant worship and real connection, grounded in Unitarian Universalism and open to seekers of all kinds, including you, wherever you are, wherever you joined us from this evening. My name is Matt, and I'm the Director of Community Life here for Sanctuary Boston. This is our 4th and final worship in our worship series, Grow Where You're Planted. And when we planned for this worship, this doesn't happen often, but I knew exactly the picture I wanted to use for the Facebook photo. And that's it. Have you ever seen a tree that worked so hard to grow where it was planted? When I tried to Google image search this tree, I found this, all of these pages trying to describe how to get to it. How to which highway to go down and which campsite to find and which beach to walk up and which direction to look. And remember to go at low tide, because if it's high tide, you can get in trouble. The ocean is just on this side. And it was so cool reading this very complicated, very detailed direction of how to journey to the far ends of the earth to find this very specific tree, because I found it on accident many years ago. I was camping on the Olympic Peninsula, and the trip was over, and we were just at the boring part where you stay the last night at this car camping place right next to a highway, spending all nights listening to trucks pass by. And we had seen some of the most beautiful natural scenery I'd ever seen in my life on this trip. And I thought it was over. But one afternoon with some extra time, I just strolled down the beach. And I know this isn't true for everyone, but I don't really like beaches. Personally, I'm not a beach person. I went to the Olympic Peninsula for the forest. Thank you very much. Here we were camping between a beach and a highway, and I came across this tree and was stunned. I was stunned to find this incredible thing. This is not my picture. The picture I took is not as pretty, but I think it's a reminder, and I still look at this picture every now and then to remember to grow where I'm planted, even if it's tricky, and that we can still create something beautiful, even when it feels like the ground underneath us is giving way. We can still reach out and find something to hold on nearby. So I invite you into that spirit of growing where you're planted this evening, as we'll be reflecting on what it means to be rooted in tradition, even as that tradition is changing, to be rooted in communities, even as communities continue to evolve. With that, let's welcome each other into this space that is made sacred by your presence here this evening. And I'll invite some Eric and Pam from our Monday night small group to come read the words of welcome. I'll invite you to read along. And today is also Eric's 50th birthday.
Whether you go to church on Sunday mornings,
or light candles on Friday nights,
whether you've been hurt by religion,
saved by it,
or some of both,
whether you're brand new to spiritual community,
or a seasoned seeker,
whoever you are, or whatever you are,
wherever you are on your journey,
we welcome you.
I'd like to extend an invitation to everyone here to rise as you're able. To rise as you're able, and greet your neighbor, introduce yourself to someone new you haven't met, say hello to an old friend, as I was able to do tonight. If you're online, Please write in the chat and let us know where you're joining us from. Have a chance to say hello to each other. Oh, and if you're in person, make sure you wave to the camera and say hi to our friends online. Thanks.
All right, friends, we're going to invite you back to your seats and invite your attention back. So as you may know, because we won't stop talking about it, this is our 10th anniversary of Sanctuary Boston. Hooray! Every time, I love it. And as part of that celebration, there's like a long list of ways that we're celebrating, and it's so great to be taking this year to deepen our community and vision the future. But it's also, of course, a time for looking back at our past. And so we've been doing a whole series of history, sanctuary history testimonials. And Joanna has been here since the very first service, since 3 days before the first service. So I'm going to hand it over to Joe for a testimonial.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, y'all. So, I love all the highs back. That's so nice. So it was the spring of 2012, and it was my second year of both studying to be a rabbi at Hebrew College and exploring a deepening connection with Unitarian Universalism. One day, Mark David and I were both heading downtown for separate meetings, and here's how I remember it. I asked him what his meeting was about, and he said something like, oh, some UU students at Harvard Divinity School and our friend Matt are trying to start, he didn't say it like that, it wasn't meant to be a laugh line, but that's okay. Our friends and some HDS students are trying to start a weeknight service led by young adults and including a bunch of contemporary music, something that feels a little different from Sunday morning church. And they are bringing me on board to be their music director. It was like a record scratched in my head, you know, that like sound. What? I replied, like, that sounds awesome. How do I get in on that? I want to help launch that. How do I get involved? I had been attending Arlington Street Church, a few blocks from here in the Back Bay, since the fall of 2010. And while I loved the congregation, it definitely still felt like church. As someone who had spent a lifetime steeped in Jewish community, I was pretty sensitive to the aspects of attending UU services that still felt like I was at a Protestant service, from the way the service was structured, to the architecture of the very churchy church building, to the stained glass windows depicting the life of Jesus. It didn't feel quite like mine, at least not at that point. I had found my Boston Jewish spiritual homes in places like Kavod House. I loved that they had a different lay person leading services each week, that they centered the experience of young adults, that they featured reflections about social justice issues instead of sermons. The singing was super vibrant, and the gatherings took place in living rooms instead of well-apportioned, stately sanctuaries. And hearing about this beginnings of Sanctuary Boston, which wasn't called that yet, it was still called the Chalice Project, it spoke right to my heart. I didn't know that I could find a community grounded in Unitarian Universalism that was grassroots and young adult-led and contemporary and heartfelt and experimental. I didn't even know I wanted that, but I wanted in. I said something like, so sign me up, how do I get involved in getting this started? The response I got from the lead organizer was, oh, that's so great. Unfortunately, we are so new and so experimental, we don't yet have a procedure for bringing in new volunteers. So hang tight. And then it took 6 more months before an opening appeared in the form of Sanctuary's newest communication coordinator position, which I started 3 days before our first experimental worship. We have gotten better at bringing in newcomers and inviting people into leadership since those earliest days, thank goodness. And also, we're still continuing to experiment, and we still have more questions than answers about how this community is going to keep evolving. So during those 6 months of impatient waiting, of knowing that there was this thing that I could imagine and that people were building and that I wanted in, I transferred to Andover Newton Theological School so I could pursue Unitarian Universalist ordination, partially thanks to this concept of Sanctuary Boston. Knowing that there were people out there trying to launch a community just like what I was craving helped me see a path toward the kind of spiritual leadership I could imagine doing. And I'll always remember sitting in a circle at that first worship service. You know, it was in this building, so it was still in a church, but we were sitting in a circle up here on the chancel together. I was surrounded by a lot of people at my stage of life. There were so many voices leading worship. Every element was from someone different in the circle, taking turns, leading us through a homegrown liturgy. And gosh, I still get chills when I think about the joys and concerns that were shared that day. The depth of vulnerability and the authenticity of support offered just blew me away. And I knew from that night on, I had found another place I could call home. I'll pause my history there so that we can keep building history together. Thank you. So our next song, I'll start talking about it, and then if you have something to say about it, please jump in. This is Magnificence. I first learned it at Hebrew College. It's one of those songs where there's multiple parts that you can layer on top of each other. So as we sing tonight, we invite you to sing the parts that call to you, make up some new ones, whatever works for you. We know that some folks in Christian traditions have a practice of not saying the word hallelujah until during Lent, and so until Easter. So if that's you, just sing the first and the fourth lines, and that'll be great. Invite you, we want them to rise? What do we think? Mark David always wants people to rise if you'd like to, so invite you to rise in body or spirit if you'd like to sing. We'll start at the beginning and add some parts in. Wash me away so that all that's left is love. Great Spirit, wash me away so that all that's left is love. Wash me away so that all that's left is love.
magnificence in the ocean. Waves are coming in, waves are coming in. There is so much magnificence in the ocean. Waves are coming in, waves are coming in. There is so much magnificence in the ocean. Waves are coming in, waves are coming in. There is so much magnificence in the ocean. Waves are coming in, waves are coming. Wash me, wash me away, so that all that's left is love. Wash me away, so that all that's left is love. Wash me away, so that all that's left is love. One more time. Wash me away, so that all that's left is love.
Let's take a deep breath together. You may be seated as you exhale.
Our words of inspiration come to us today from Ada Maria Isasi Diaz, author of Mujerista Theology. The role of tradition is to make present the wisdom of generations past, which we are then called to evaluate and apply to the present in view of our need for survival, our need for liberation. And from James Luther Adams, a living tradition is not bequeathed through some law of inheritance. It must be earned, not without dust and heat, and not without humbling grace.
Would you take another breath with me? Ever since the day that I arrived in New England, my Midwestern prairie heart has been enamored with the ocean. Have you all seen this thing? It's bonkers. And knowing of my fascination with the sea, my mom gave me this very cool present for my 40th birthday last year. She bought me a ticket for a 4-day excursion on an actual tall ship on the actual ocean. The boat is called the Louis R. French, and it is the oldest schooner still on the water. It's a gaff-rigged, topsail, double-masted schooner. And I have no idea what that means, but I think it basically means that it's like really old-timey. So it came to pass that I spent 4 days on this huge old boat built in 1871. And one morning, I was sitting in the crowded little kitchen below deck, and I looked up at this huge beam that I noticed across the center of the ship, and it was labeled with the original serial number from 1871, where it was made. So I turned to our captain, Captain Becky, and I asked how much of this ship is original to the year 1871. Well, she said, putting her hand up on that beam, this beam here. Also, maybe the iron bell at the top of the mast. I was floored. This oldest schooner on the water was almost all new. Now, you might be familiar with the ship of Theseus, a thought experiment handed down to us from the old Greek philosophers. According to legend, Theseus was the guy who founded the city of Athens, and the people of Athens after that kept his ship in the city harbor, and they would take it out on the water once a year for a holy pilgrimage. After a few hundred years, though, of maintaining the ship in the harbor and taking it out every year and replacing the planks as they rotted away, some of these Greek philosophers in Athens began to wonder, if every part of the ship has at some point been replaced, is it still the same boat? Is it really still Theseus's ship? Now, if you're not embarking on an old-timey sailboat, this question of Theseus's ship may feel distant to you. But this same question, I think, shows up in our spiritual lives, too. Some of us here have been hurt by religion, and some of us have been saved by it. And religions, by and large, are a lot like old ships, passed down through the generations, constantly in need of maintenance and renovation. And some religious conservatives, the fundamentalists, will tell you that renovations are never necessary. No updates are needed. No planks need to be replaced. But religious progressives understand that religion is always being updated, and that's what keeps it seaworthy and useful. And when we say that we want to be spiritual but not religious, it might be because there is a dangerous amount of rot in the tradition that we were born into. And there are 1,000 good reasons to want a clean break from institutional religion. And I can certainly understand not wanting to renovate a leaky old boat that was built for another time, particularly because that work of renovating it has to be done while you're already out on the ocean, already on life's journey. But the ocean isn't necessarily safer alone in a rowboat either. The role of tradition is to make present the wisdom of generations past, as we heard in our reading. And then our job is to apply it to the moment we're in for nothing less than our survival and our liberation. I think Professor Asasi Diaz would remind us to grow where we are planted, but with an emphasis on the word grow. Take whatever nutrients we find in the soil around us and grow something new from them. I'll say this, I'm glad that I didn't try and spend 4 days on the ocean in a 150-year-old boat that hadn't had any parts replaced since it was made. In fact, there aren't any boats 150 years old for whom that is true. And there aren't any religions either around still that haven't changed in the last 150 years. One of my earliest memories of witnessing this kind of evolution of a religious community was in my high school youth group. For the 4 years I was in high school, my youth group was the touchstone of my week. Every Wednesday night, we would gather and we would do a check-in that was absurdly long. I have the sense that other groups would do like activities or maybe like have topics of discussion. Not us. It was just a check-in for 90 minutes all night, every week. And I loved it. That space to listen so deeply and so consistently to the people in my community, and that space to speak and be heard by my people, it was liberating, and it was soul-saving. But then, I had been out of high school for about a year when I went home for a summer break, and I decided to visit the youth group one Wednesday evening. And you're not going to believe this, but there were all these new people there. And these new people who were so young, who I didn't even know, they talked about the shallowest things all night long. I spent the whole evening mourning the loss of this once sacred, valuable group, thinking about how as soon as my generation had left, the whole thing had fallen into disrepair. And then at the end of the meeting, after 90 minutes of unspiritual, unmeaningful, boring-ass conversation, this one kid in the group says to everyone, he says, you know, this is the only place in my life where I can really be myself. And if it wasn't for you all, and if it wasn't for this place, I don't know what I'd do. And at the time, can I be honest here, just between us and those of you online and anyone watching YouTube later, just between us, at the time what I thought was, kid, you don't even know what spiritual is. I was almost offended by it. But today, with some distance, I have begun to wonder if maybe spiritual depth and real connection isn't always something you can see from the outside. And maybe the youth group had fallen into disrepair, and maybe it was only a fragment of its former self. But maybe even a fragment of unconditional love is enough to transform somebody's world. Or maybe traditions evolve and culture changes, and growing up requires some openness to change that I'm clearly still learning. Maybe it means considering that what worked for you isn't what will work for the next generation. At our last worship gathering 2 weeks ago, Leona reminded us that home is where you make it. And some people will tell you that home is a thing that never changes. And some religious people will tell you that a tradition is a thing that never changes. And some love songs will tell you even that a person never changes. Friends, it's all baloney. They're all just Theseus's old ship. Grow where you are planted, but remember to grow. Grow your sense of home, grow your tradition, and grow yourself towards love and towards liberation. Now, I had that feeling again recently, that awful returning to visit the youth group even after you've aged out feeling. For as long as I can remember, my own Unitarian Universalist tradition has been most clearly defined by our 7 principles. And I say as long as I can remember because, to my horror, I learned this week that I am 3 years older than those 7 principles. These principles, though, have served as the central beam of Unitarian Universalism for 38 years now, and they have been enshrined in Article 2 of the UU Association's bylaws. But the association will likely vote to replace them in a couple months this June. And I'll be honest, I was not a fan of this news when I first heard it. I have my own list of ways that I wish were different about my larger faith community. In fact, most of my life has been pushing and pulling at this living tradition in all kinds of different ways. I've been trying to rebuild this creaky old boat in my own way for a long time now. And as James Luther Adams said, it has made for some real dust and heat now and then, including some humbling grace, more than I would care to admit. So I was embarrassed to hear this all too familiar voice in my own heart when I heard the news about the famous Article 2 changes. This crabby little voice I heard deep inside, it said, well, sure, we want change, but just not that change, right? Maybe somebody has said that to you when you've tried to replace some old rot. After wrestling with these feelings, though, and after about 14 Facebook posts came across my feed about it, I eventually got it together, and I took a deep breath, and I clicked the link. And you know, most of the words proposed for the newly renovated Article 2 were pretty familiar. They were words like justice and equity and interdependence. There was a new word, a word that stuck out to me, though, the word transformation. I felt called out. And it said, we covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change, it says, is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages. Never complete and never perfect. changing our principles to state that we are open to change is a good change. And it seems it's a reminder that I especially could use. There's one other part of that gaff-rigged sailboat that Captain Becky later mentioned might be original. The wood at the very bottom of the hull, the wood that is closest to the sea. The part that's always underwater lasts longer because the bacteria doesn't have oxygen to grow there. And somehow it doesn't surprise me that the part of the boat most central to keeping it afloat, which is, after all, a boat's most central purpose, it doesn't surprise me somehow that those planks have staying power, even though they're hidden underneath, invisible to a tourist like me. So maybe what's most important isn't always what's most visible when you first look at a tradition or a community or a person. And there's another new word being added to our UU values this year. The new word is love. It wasn't in the principles before. Or at least it wasn't visible in the writing, even though I think some of us could feel it underneath. Now it will be at the center where it belongs, keeping everything else afloat. I used to be captivated by this question of Theseus's ship. But now when I think of that old boat in the Athens harbor, I think it doesn't actually matter if we call it Theseus's or not. What matters is that it's able to make the pilgrimage. What matters is that it's seaworthy. What matters is that each new generation is able to take what was handed down to them and make use of it for their own survival and liberation. The important thing about a sacred text or a spiritual practice isn't winning an argument over what it was supposed to mean 1,000 years ago. The important thing is whether it makes you a more loving person this year. So if you have been hurt by a religion that raised you, friends, know that it is okay to make a clean break. And know also that it's okay to replace all of the rotten parts, even if that means that just a sturdy beam at the center and maybe some old planks down below are all that's left of the original. And if you have been saved by a religion that offered you at least a fragment of unconditional love when you needed it the most, well, hand that fragment down to the next person in whatever form they need it. May we make the ship anew as we sail it together, beloveds, and may we grow together toward liberation and love. Amen. Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. Roots in the ground to keep me strong, and wings on my back so I can fly on home. Would you repeat after me? Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. Roots in the ground to keep me strong. Roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. Would you rise in body or spirit? Let's sing together. Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. Roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. A little louder. Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. Roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. Here we go. Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. Roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. Roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly. Let's add some clapping. Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. I need roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on. Two more times. Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. I need roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on. Last time. Lately I've been thinking about roots and wings. Lately I've been thinking how I need these things. Roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can roots in the ground to keep me strong. Wings on my back so I can fly on. Roots in the ground to keep me. Wings on my back so I can fly on. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. Last one. Wings on my back so I can fly on home. Oh, you sound good. Let's take another deep breath together. You may be seated as you exhale.
We welcome up another birthday human.
The recipient of our offering today, our offering will be split between Sanctuary Boston and Mass Affordable Housing Alliance, which is a local organization that works to educate and mobilize to increase affordable home ownership opportunities, especially among first-time or first-time generation home buyers, which will help close the racial wealth and home ownership gaps. And this week, we've seen how volatile our financial reality can be in this country with the collapse of some banks that might seem like it's far away. But it turns out that Silicon Valley Bank, one of the banks that collapsed this week, has been a major financer for affordable housing in Boston. So ripples from that crisis may make their way into people's lived experiences here in Boston. So this is a particularly important time to help folks that are pursuing home ownership in Boston by supporting the Massachusetts Affordable Housing Alliance. They've been doing great work for over 30 years, based right here in Boston, their leadership as well. For those of you who are online, you can use the links that are magically appearing in the chat box to donate on Venmo or PayPal. For those of us here, you can contribute through Venmo and PayPal as well, or collect. We're going to pass a collection basket around. And this is also the time for folks in person to put in your joys and sorrows cards. And if you need one of those, I believe if you raise your hands, we can help get you one of those. So may our offering to support the good works of Boston Sanctuary and the Massachusetts Affordable Housing Alliance be joyfully given, and know that it will be gratefully received.
sing with me, there is a love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love.
We know that whenever we gather as a community, we come with joys and sorrows, hopes and prayers on our hearts. In this community, you don't have to hold the sorrow or the joy alone. I'll begin by sharing those joys and sorrows that were written out and handed to me by those in person, knowing that there's always more on our hearts than could ever be written down on paper. And after that, we'll have a time where I'll invite those online to share as well, beginning with those in person. Sloan shares a joy, spending my spring break with my girlfriend and lots of old friends. Soren shares a joy, grateful to have been held in community as a trans singer this week and feeling joy and love in my voice after transition in new ways. This one is an anonymous sharing, which is a mixture of joy and concern. After waiting for news for a long time, our family got news today that is both joyful and sad. Please hold us in your love. Hayward shares a sorrow. My friend just recently came out to their mom, who is not being supportive at all. It's an anonymous sharing, first of a joy for singing in community, and a sorrow at grieving the loss of loved ones. Julia shares a sorrow, prayers for my student and his family as he undergoes treatment for a childhood brain tumor. A sorrow from Ellie Valley and Emma Redding. Our beloved friend, coworker, and comrade, Michael Lau, passed away suddenly last week. He was an amazing person, activist, social worker, agitator, and co-conspirator. May he rest in peace and be the wind at our backs. An anonymous sorrow, sharing the sorrow of my client who was assaulted last week and nearly died. He is healing and getting the care he needs, and my heart still goes out to him as he begins a long journey of recovery. A joy from Ashley. I got into Oxford for study abroad. I get to spend 7 months traveling Europe. A mixture from Leona. Getting to the time where I miss my parents, brother, and dog an extra amount, but so grateful for them always being available for a quick FaceTime. And finally, one from Mirabelle Carrier-Ladd, a joy. My birthday is in 9 days, and I am turning 9. Let's sing together.
There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding we rest in this love.
Those of us who are joining online, if you have a joy or a sorrow or a hope or a prayer, you're welcome to put it in the chat and I'll read it aloud. If you'd like me to share it anonymously, you can send me a private message. My name on Zoom today is Joe-Joys and Sorrows. I share a sorrow from Jesse, aging canine heart companion and spiritual guide, sinking slowly into quality of life decisions, his and ours. Hannah shares a joy. My brother is coming into town in honor of Mom's 85th birthday. Nathan shares a joy. Joy for my daughter, who has earned an amazing internship this summer at CMU and will be spending a semester abroad at St. Andrews in Scotland. So proud and a bit sad to be so far from her on her journey. Beth shares a joy. I am the newly elected president of my congregation. Liz shares, my joy is that I get to worship with you tonight. Oops, hang on, it scrolled funny. My joy is that I get to worship with you tonight as I am on March break from my job and celebrating my 35th birthday tomorrow, along with all the other Pisces here this evening. Barbara shares, a huge joy. My niece got into a wonderful, oh, it scrolled weird again. Sorry, Barb. My niece got into a wonderful medical school with financial support to make it possible. I love seeing her heart and dreams grow. Mark David shares, recently had a long-term relationship end, experiencing grief and sadness, as well as relief and excitement. Kit, Megan, and Rochios share a joy. Megan is at Sanctuary with us for the first time ever tonight, and we are so glad to have them here. Max shares a joy. Watching the people who deserve a great deal do well at life is amazing to see. Maura shares a joy. A few weeks ago, I shared about a job interview that I was nervous about. Happy to share that I've accepted the position and will be starting in mid-April after some much-needed time off. Sarah shares, still feeling spooked from my partner's recent car accident. Blessedly, he's fine, but I'm still feeling shaken. An anonymous joy. Someone writes, precious, such precious time with a friend I've known off and on for the last 28 years. A sorrow, not sure when we'll have time like that again. Let's sing together one more time.
There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love.
I invite you to join me in a few moments of meditation or prayer as we hold in our hearts everything we've heard and witnessed and shared this evening. Holy One, Spirit of transformation and continuity, We come this evening holding grief and sorrow, fear and concern. In life's tough moments and in the bittersweet, may we know ourselves held in love. The love of community, the love of friends and family, maybe the love of something bigger in which we can rest. In times of joy, milestones, adventures, celebrations, new beginnings, changes yet to be determined. In the midst of all of that, may we feel ourselves uplifted by that love, knowing that we are joined on the journey, that folks follow behind us, dancing and clapping and cheering us on. Through all that, these next days, weeks, or whatever our next chapters may bring, may we know ourselves loved right through. So may it be. Amen.
Make us aware we are a sanctuary, each made holy and loved right through. With thanksgiving, we are a living sanctuary.
Before we join together in singing Sanctuary once more, in a moment we'll join together and sing. And then after that, we invite each other to light candles at the tables over there and in the back. And as you light candles and pass the taper to the person next to you, it is a reminder of the light that we share within us and between us, of the light of divinity that is around us. And I invite folks at home as well to take a minute to hold that light within you or to light a candle yourself. Let's join in singing together again, Sanctuary.
Make us aware we are a sanctuary, each made holy and loved right through. With thanksgiving, we are a living sanctuary anew. Make us aware. Make us aware. Our sanctuary, each made holy, loved right through. With thanksgiving, we are a living sanctuary. Sanctuary, each made holy and loved right through. With thanksgiving. We are a living sanctuary anew. Make us aware we are a sanctuary. We're each made holy, loved right through with thanksgiving. We are a living sanctuary anew.
Beloveds, the important thing about a religious community, about a community of faith, isn't what it was supposed to mean 1,000 years ago. It's about whether it makes you a more loving person this year. What matters about a tradition is that it's able to make the pilgrimage with you today. What matters is that it is seaworthy. So let us make the ship anew as we sail it together, and let us grow together toward liberation and toward love. May it be so, and may we make it so.
We are building. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free of hate and greed and jealousy. We are working to be free. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Start with the love that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom.